Today we're going to be talking about the optimal order of investing your money. Basically, paying yourself first. If you're new here, my name is Yvonne, and on this channel we speak about all things personal finance, self-improvement, and business. Let's jump right into it. So if you've watched my 60-20-20 rule for budgeting, you know that I am an advocate for putting 20% of your salary towards savings and investments. And particularly starting with savings. But where you should start is saving up between 1 to 3 months worth of expenses to make sure that you have a safety net if anything happens. There's so many rules out there about how big the emergency fund is, but your focus should be initially having between 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. Building this emergency fund actually takes time, and so your focus should be working towards ensuring you have 1 month's expenses put away and then building up towards the 3-month safety net. And while you're doing that, focus on the next step, which is reducing high interest debt first. So your clothing accounts, any credit cards that have exorbitantly high interest rates, that's where your focus should be. There's no point in you putting money in the stock market or putting money in high yielding savings accounts or any investment accounts that will return maybe about 7% if we're gauging using the S&P 500, yet your credit card is charging you 25% or maybe 12%. It just doesn't make sense. And so your focus needs to be literally reducing your high interest debt. It doesn't always have to be down to zero, but when you've reduced it significantly, you can then start looking at maxing out on your employer match. This is a pension match. So say you're contributing 5% towards your pension fund or retirement annuity fund. Most companies will actually match that 5%, which is literally free money. And all of a sudden, you are contributing 10% instead of just 5%. And so you need to maximize on that. I just used 5% as an example, but depending on your age, you can actually go up to 15%. For people in their 20s, the ballpark figure is about 15% going towards your retirement. And so you could put in 7.5% and let your company match the other 7.5%, which makes 15% that you're actually putting away. Or you can go all the way to 15% by yourself and allow the company to put in additional 15%. That's 30% that you're actually saving, and the other 15% is not your money. When it comes to building wealth, loading as much as you can towards retirement as early as possible is what you want to be doing. And so after you've made arrangements to take full advantage of your employer match and max out on whatever contribution they're willing to put in, you can then focus on loading your tax-free savings account. In South Africa, you can put a maximum of $36,000 on an annual basis. In the US, that's $6,500. And so maxing out on your tax-free savings and then investing from that tax-free savings account into the S&P 500 is the most tax-efficient way of starting to invest. At the start of the year, you make sure you load your tax-free savings account, and the start of the year could be different depending on your geography. But the focus is to make sure that your tax-free savings account is maxed out and you invest from there first. And so once you've loaded your tax-free savings account and you have made your investments, the next step is to pay down low interest debt. As we're going through this process, building the emergency fund, paying down high interest debt and making sure it's at a minimum, ensuring that we have our employer match, and ensuring that we're maxing out our tax-free savings account and investing from there, it's important to make sure that you also pay down any pesky low interest debt and just stay away from that debt as much as you can. Once that's out of the way, you then start focusing on reducing your mortgage. I've gotten a lot of questions about whether you should start reducing your mortgage, pay that down first instead of investing. And the truth is, You actually need to do both. But the order of that is quite important. And from there, once you are satisfied with how much you've reduced your mortgage, whether you pay it off, that's great. You can actually use your paid off house as collateral for another loan. You can then start loading more back into your emergency fund to ensure that you have a really strong safety net. If you can get up to 18 months worth of living expenses, then you're not tied or stressed if something happens to your 9 to 5. If anything, you're open to taking risks because you know that you have your financial reserves in order. While step number 5 is a good step, it is absolutely dependent on your own situation. For instance, you might actually be better off paying into your investments instead of paying down your mortgage and letting your mortgage run through, or letting your tenant pay for your mortgage, depending on whether you're negatively geared or not. And put most of your excess funds towards actually investing. Remember, time in the market is more important than timing the market. And so you want to make sure that you're putting as much investment as possible, as early as possible, and for as long as possible. And so if you're in a situation where your interest rates are actually lower than what you would get on the stock market, taking into account the compounding effects, it's important for you to actually focus on investing in the stock market. However, if you're like me and you're living in South Africa and the interest rates are quite high on mortgages, it's better for you to actually pay down your mortgage and make sure that you have an asset that you can hold on to and you can use as collateral for other properties. But my advice would be, if you're in a high interest environment, focus on paying down your mortgage. And so that's it, everyone. That's the optimal order of investing.